Superman is an iconic superhero who soars through the skies in a red cape and with his underwear on the outside of his spandex jumpsuit. Despite his fashion choices, he remains one of the most enduring figures in popular culture, for some reason. Created in 1938 by writer Jerry Siegel and artist Joe Shuster, Superman first appeared in Action Comics #1, published by DC Comics, marking the dawn of the superhero genre. His backstory is that he was born as Kal-El, on the doomed planet Krypton, where people were progressive enough to wear their underwear in any manner they chose. He was sent to Earth as an infant by his parents, Jor-El and Lara, to escape their world's destruction when the core exploded and people were too busy worrying about the placement of their spandex undergarments to do anything useful about it. Raised as Clark Kent by kind-hearted Kansas farmers, Jonathan and Martha Kent, he grows up embracing humanity and moral values while discovering his extraordinary alien powers. In his world, Superman embodies hope, strength, and unwavering morality. As Clark Kent, a mild-mannered journalist at the Daily Planet in Metropolis, he is humble, empathetic, and relatable, hiding his true self behind glasses and a bumbling demeanor. As Superman, he possesses superhuman strength, flight, X-ray vision, and an unbreakable commitment to truth, justice, and the American way.
What are you looking at? Huh?
In the spring of 1938, a vibrant red and blue figure soared onto the pages of Action Comics #1, forever altering the landscape of popular culture. Superman, the world's first superhero, was not the product of a corporate machine but the brainchild of two young creators, writer Jerry Siegel and artist Joe Shuster. Their creation, born from personal struggles, cultural influences, introduced a character who embodied hope and heroism. Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster were childhood friends from Cleveland, Ohio, united by their love for science fiction, pulp magazines, and comic strips. Siegel, born in 1914 to Jewish immigrant parents from Lithuania, grew up as a shy, imaginative boy captivated by stories of adventure and heroism. Shuster, who was also born in 1914 to Jewish immigrants, was a Canadian-born artist whose family moved to Cleveland when he was young. The latest movie incarnation of the character has hit several bumps along the way, a fact that surprised nobody. The studio claims it's a positive spin on immigration, building on the symbolism of hope and acceptance baked into the character, while an increasingly incredulous audience see right through this and suggest it's just another moral lecture from immoral people pushing a dark political agenda.
I just gotta wake up here.
But surely they're not wrong. Surely the very character of Superman is an immigrant who stands up for what's right against anyone who threatens harm to humanity. Isn't this the expression of exactly what a superhero is meant to be? Well, let's look a little deeper into the history of the character and see what this is really all about.
What's going on?
Superman, the caped beacon of hope, is celebrated as the archetype of heroism, a symbol of justice and moral clarity. Yet, the story of his creators, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, is not completely unblemished. Beneath the bright surface of their achievement lies a darker tale of personal desperation, industry exploitation, and the tangled motivations. To understand what Superman's creation was really about, we should peel back the layers of Siegel and Shuster's lives, their frustrations, and the cultural undercurrents that shaped their work.
You may continue.
Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, both born in 1914 to Jewish immigrant families, were outsiders in 1930s America. Siegel, a bookish dreamer from Cleveland, Ohio, grew up in a working-class household strained by the Great Depression. His father, a shopkeeper, died during a robbery in 1932, an event that left young Jerry grappling with grief and a sense of powerlessness. No! Shuster, a shy artist who moved from Canada to Cleveland, faced similar economic hardship, as his own health was frail due to poor eyesight and physical weakness. Their shared love for pulp fiction and comic strips offered an escape, but it also fueled a burning ambition to rise above their circumstances. Superman was not just a creative spark, it was a desperate bid for success, a way to transcend the poverty and anonymity that defined their lives. The slightly less bright side of their story begins with their motivations. While Superman is often seen as a pure embodiment of heroism, Siegel and Shuster's early work reveals a more complex character. Their first iteration of Superman, in a 1933 self-published story titled The Reign of the Superman, was not a hero but a villain, a bald, telepathic tyrant who used his powers for domination. Inspired by Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch, this proto-Superman reflected a fascination with power and control, perhaps a reaction to their own feelings of helplessness in a world marked by economic collapse and rising authoritarianism. Though they later reimagined their Superman as a hero, this initial darkness hints at their unspoken desire to wield influence through their work, to create a figure who could bend the world to their will in ways they could not. The creation of Superman was also inspired by frustration and rejection. For years, Siegel and Shuster had pitched their heroic Superman to publishers, only to face dismissal and rejection. The comic industry, still in its infancy, was skeptical of a superpowered alien hero, viewing the concept as too fantastical.
I don't think so.
They might have had a point. Superman has always had a rocky connection with the audience. His invulnerability has turned out to be a narrative impediment to his relatability. They introduced Kryptonite and other weaknesses, but it has never been quite enough to humanize the character and make him feel like one of us.
Holding hands with a god.
In any case, this relentless rejection fueled their determination as well as their growing resentment.
I'm fighting for my people.
When National Allied Publications, later DC Comics, finally accepted Superman for Action Comics in 1938, the duo signed away the rights for a paltry $130, a decision driven by desperation rather than ignorance. This transaction, often romanticized as a naive misstep, was a stark reflection of their financial situation and the exploitative nature of the early comic industry. Nothing much in media has changed in that regard.
Nothing changes that.
Siegel and Shuster's dream of fame was tinged with a darker reality. They were cogs in a machine that would profit immensely from their work while leaving them behind. Superman's narrative, an alien refugee who becomes a protector of his adopted home, can be read as a fantasy of empowerment, but it also carries a darker subtext. The character's invincibility and moral absolutism may reflect a yearning to confront real-world evils, from economic injustice to the growing specter of National Socialism. Yet, this apparent idealism was not without its complications. Superman's early stories often depicted him as a vigilante, bypassing legal systems to punish corrupt landlords and war profiteers, ironically. This suggested a distrust in institutions that mirrored Siegel and Shuster's own disillusionment with a world that seemed stacked against them. Their personal struggles added another layer of darkness. Siegel's grief over his father's death likely influenced Superman's role as a protector, but it also imbued the character with a sense of unattainable perfection, a hero who could prevent the tragedies that Siegel could not. Shuster's physical limitations and poor eyesight, which made drawing a laborious task, fueled his drive to create a figure of ultimate strength, a stark contrast to his own fragility. Their partnership, while fruitful, was not immune to tension. The pressure to produce under tight deadlines and financial pressures strained their collaboration over time. The success of their creation, rather than bringing unalloyed joy, became a source of resentment as they watched their hero generate millions for publishers while they struggled to pay the bills. As Superman soared to fame, spawning radio shows, cartoons, and merchandise, Siegel and Shuster were sidelined. Their attempts to reclaim ownership led to lawsuits, but they lacked the resources to challenge such a powerful industry. By the 1940s, both were working on lesser projects, their names fading from the spotlight. The bitterness of being cheated out of their creation lingered for decades, with Siegel publicly cursing the deal they had signed. Only in the 1970s, amid public outcry and pressure before the release of the Superman film, did DC Comics grant them modest pensions and creator credits.
Finally.
A belated acknowledgement that could not erase years of financial and emotional hardship.
You have every right to be angry, Lois.
What was Superman's creation really about? It was about two young men, marginalized by circumstance, channeling their fears, frustrations, and hope into a character who could rise above the world's injustices. It was about the allure of power and the cost of naivety in an exploitative industry, and it was about the tension between dreams and reality, a hero who could save the world but could not save his creators from their struggles. Siegel and Shuster gave us Superman, a symbol of light, but their story reveals the shadows cast by ambition, desperation, and a world that often fails its dreamers. But where does this leave the new film? Sadly, Superman has a long history of standing for something unattainable while corruption hides behind it. He's the dream of carbon-neutral electric cars filled with power generated by burning fossil fuels. He's the lies our politicians tell us while they steal from our pockets to pay for them, and his empty promises our society sells us to fill our head with dreams.
Sell them on the American dream.
He stands for immigration as a stranger who came to our planet to protect us while we can see our cities burn. Superman, and idealized characters like him, have always been a distraction. They're a way to sell you an idealized notion to keep from you turning the finger of blame to the people who truly deserve it. In the case of the creation of this character, he's a symbol that Jerry and Joe sold to themselves of an icon who was everything to them that they weren't. He's certainly a symbol, but a symbol of false hope, a representation of the system trampling the common man but handing back a tiny concession in exchange for everything you stand to lose. In many ways, the lies they are using him to sell show us that, since his inception, nothing very much has actually changed. But what hasn't changed, and what never will, is that these stories are a distraction from the truth. The creators of this character made a person who represented what they were afraid of, a literal personification of everything that was wrong with the world. They then pivoted to create the heroic figure we are more familiar with today. He was everything they wished they were, strong and powerful and honorable and decent. He was their ideal, and became the same reference to millions of readers throughout the decades. But he was a distraction from the fact that we don't need a fictional hero to stand up for us, whether it be a man with questionable underwear choices, Donald Trump, Elon Musk, Barack Obama, or Chuck Norris. We can be our own heroes, and the world works best when we don't forget that.